Hello, action takers. Welcome to Live Blissed Out, a podcast where I have authentic conversations with business owners and subject matter experts to help us get the scoop, the 411, and the lowdown on a variety of topics. Tired of hesitating or making decisions without having the big picture? Want to be in the know? Then this is the place to go. I'm your host, Marissa Houston, helping achieve bliss through awareness and action. Thanks for joining me. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice. Want to save yourself that trip to the market? Instacart delivers groceries in as little as 1 hour. They connect you with personal shoppers in your area to shop and deliver groceries from your favorite stores. Receive free delivery on your first order over $35. Just follow the link in the show notes to let Instacart know I sent you and help support the show. Instacart, never step foot in a grocery store again. This is episode 24. Want to learn how to live your best life? We'll talk about that. My guest is Michelle Scott, owner of Michelle Scott Coaching. Michelle holds a master's degree in spiritual psychology with an emphasis in consciousness, health and healing, and a professional coaching certification. She has been coaching women and men for over 8 years, assisting them in their growth as leaders, both personally and professionally. Her clients include corporate executives, business owners, authors, coaches, stay-at-home moms, parents, and people looking to connect with their authentic selves and deeper purpose in both business and life overall. Her strengths are in relationships, effective communication and listening, finding clarity, creating lives of purpose and meaning, deep connection to the authentic self, and increased self-awareness. For more information, visit her website at michellescottcoaching.com. Hey, Michelle, it's really great to have you on the show.
Hey, Marissa, it's so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You are a life coach, and the subject matter we're going to be talking about is living a bigger life. And that's kind of a broad statement, but I'd like to start first by asking you what got you so passionate about doing what you do today?
I love to share this story because it's so pivotal in my life, such a big change for me. And if it helps somebody to hear, I guess, what's possible, then that's what I enjoy doing. So thank you for asking that. And what it is I was diagnosed with hyperthyroidism in fall of 2009. And somehow I knew that the way I was treating myself inside, inner critic, I wasn't being very healthy, not only physically, like I wasn't exercising as much as I needed, et cetera, but I also was very stressed in my life. And something just I knew was going on, but I didn't really realize how much that was impacting the thyroid. So I went to school to get my master's in spiritual psychology, and that just totally opened me up to how much I was treating myself pretty poorly. I had a very critical inner voice. I was a very type A personality, hard driving, just very high standards. I had high expectations for myself, all of those things. And living that kind of life just doesn't do well for the body to be in that environment and that stressful situation all the time. So that's really what I worked on, was cleaning all of that up. And in that process, I also started to feel much more peaceful, much more happy, so much more joyful. I was having more fun. I still am. And now I'm doing exactly what I know I'm meant to be doing here on the planet, which is helping other people with the same things. And so I just really found my purpose through that illness, actually. So it's a good story and helpful for me to remember, too, why I'm doing what I'm doing. But that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
It is a wonderful story, and really a lot of us can relate to that because there are so many things that happen to us in our lives that inspire us to figure out what it is that our purpose is and how we can help others. And that's exactly what you did with this health challenge that you had to deal with. We're all different and we all have different goals and dreams, but what does living a bigger life mean to people in general? Like, what is something that you're seeing people are looking for in their lives to help them achieve the goals and dreams that they set for themselves?
Like you said, everybody will have a different definition of what living a bigger life means for them. For me, it means having more purpose and meaning, not just going through the motions of my day-to-day busyness, but actually being present in the moment in my life. So I'm enjoying the process, enjoying being with my kids, enjoying being with my clients, enjoying being with my family, really being able to tune into what is important to me and then being able to put in actions to make that happen. And that's called listening to myself. Very important. Living a bigger life is basically most people or most clients that I work with, and then this includes myself, we're not really considering that there are things that are holding us back from really living in joy, really living a peaceful life. And most of us aren't aware because we're just so used to, oh, this is the way it is. But when we start to step back and reflect on the areas of our life that are great, hopefully there are a lot of areas in our lives that are great. And there may be some areas in our lives that aren't working as well as we'd like them to be, but that we can actually do something about that. We can actually create our lives even better than what they are. And it just takes some time to look at what that is, what those areas are, and then put in some action plans and figure out what we want to do about that. So that's called living a bigger life, is when we look at what isn't working well and then do something about that. So our lives are even more fun, more fulfilling.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that because that's exactly the purpose of this podcast. I think a lot of times people are just not aware of things. And I love having this dialogue with my guests because we can talk about the things that we don't normally see or even think about. And then when you hear a guest talk about it and say, yeah, did you think about this or that or the other? Then you're going, oh my goodness, yeah, I never even considered that. And it starts with awareness. And then from that awareness, then we can start to identify, all right, what steps are going to work for me to make the best choices for myself?
Exactly. And another analogy I love is actually from my school, University of Santa Monica, Master's in Spiritual Psychology. One of the things that they say is that we have rocks in our backpack. So a lot of us are walking through life with this backpack on our back with all these rocks in it that we don't even know what they are. And that's what I'm talking about, is identifying those rocks. And I think about what I've created with all those rocks in my backpack. And I did pretty well. You know, I was successful in my career and all that. But imagine if you don't have the rocks in your backpack, and how much lighter and how much more you might be able to create more joy, more fun. But that's what we're talking about here, is removing the backpack. So it's much easier. So it's more light and fun and etc.
That is such a great analogy. I really like that because it helps me visualize exactly what most of us go through. What do you feel are those rocks that people are experiencing that really hold them back from going for whatever goals they set for themselves?
You know, I just had somebody I was talking to this morning, and one of the things I love to do with people is help them listen to themselves, hear their inner guidance and their wisdom, because a lot of times we're going through our lives and just not paying attention to what's really true for us. So here's one of those points, is that sometimes that can lead us into health issues. It can lead us into losing a job if we weren't paying attention to the signs were kind of being shown to us ahead of time. So one of the points is that we can get into situations like job loss or whatever because we didn't pay attention to what was happening leading up to that. And even a health issue, like we weren't exercising and we were feeling signs in our body, for instance, that okay, something's going on, but we didn't get it checked out. That's just an example. That's one of the pieces, is sometimes people get forced to slow down in their life because they weren't paying attention. Another one is sometimes, this was a big one for me, is just feeling overwhelmed and stressed all the time because I had too much on my plate. I kept putting those things on my plate myself, which sometimes I didn't even realize I was doing.
It can be self-imposed.
Exactly. And then people don't feel like they have enough time for themselves. And then there's no joy or fulfillment in their life. It's like they're going through the motions. And then really another one that I work with people on quite a bit is that they may have reached the pinnacle of their career, or they are at a place where they're ready to make a shift, but they don't really know what that is. But sometimes they won't even make the shift because they're afraid to, because they don't know how to do it or what to do. But the fact that they're thinking about it, that's a really important thing to notice. I'm thinking about this, so it's important, but to take note of that. Does that make sense?
Totally does. And I think that we put so much pressure on ourselves and we think so big that it seems insurmountable. And then we don't even take that first step, and nothing can happen without taking that first step. And we need to pat ourselves on the back when we achieve even the smallest goal, because that leads us towards the next one and the next one until we feel like we're making strides towards whatever it is that we're trying to go after.
Yes, exactly. And that's actually one of the tools we can talk about in a little bit too, but is what you said, is to break it down into small steps rather than looking at that big picture of, oh my gosh, how do I get from point A to B which is maybe a career change or something. How do I go from what I'm doing now to something that I really want to feel better about and be fulfilled in? But a lot of it is breaking it into small steps, like you just said. So that's a fun thing to help people with.
Yes, and I think we all have negative self-talk. We all tell ourselves what we can't do. And many times we even compare ourselves to other people and we say to ourselves, well, we didn't get to do that, or this other person is so great and I'm not, and everything I do just never amounts to anything. And then we talk ourselves out of it, and then we get discouraged and we feel like we can never achieve the goals that we set for ourselves. And that can also be a huge hindrance in terms of being realistic and realizing that we're all different and we all have something different to contribute. And that as long as you're moving ahead and doing things to help you get to where you need to be, then that in itself should be celebrated. Don't you think?
I agree. And I've heard this from many different people in different ways, but I want to just repeat it here because it's important to know that we're all unique. We all have our own gifts. The place that we are now is because of all of our experiences. So all of that is unique to every single person. So we all have a unique offering. We all have unique insights to bring. So even if somebody else is doing something similar to what we want to do, the way we do it will be completely different. If we don't start to do that thing or provide our services in the world or whatever it is we're creating and wanting to bring forward, then the world's missing out on that, our unique perspective on that.
It's so true. And it doesn't make sense to compare because you don't want to be the same as somebody else. You want to be yourself and be unique. And as long as you feel like you're offering something of value and contributing in some way, then there's going to be people that appreciate that, and you're not going to please everyone.
Yes. And one more thing on the comparison piece of the puzzle. I've been on Facebook or different places and been comparing myself, and I have let that stop me in the past. The thing is one of my coaches just did an article on this too. So what she said is that we can use that information not to hold us back. We could actually use it to propel us forward. So we can see that somebody else has done this thing that we're looking at and going, gosh, I wish I was doing that thing, or why are they doing that thing? But see, we can actually see that somebody is doing it. Like, oh, it's possible. So we could also turn it into motivation for what we could do, or what's possible for us to even do. And maybe we could even improve upon it rather than looking at it as a negative, like, oh, they're doing it and I don't have that or something.
When people reach out to you for professional help, what are the most common things they ask for help on?
It's such a broad range, but some of the biggest things are, so a lot of people are launching new businesses. A big one is healing relationships, and that can not necessarily be personal ones. It can be in work too, like coworkers. So coworker relationships, family, spouses, kids, like all of the relationship pieces, but then also relationship with myself. How am I treating myself? That's a big one. And some of that is finding time for yourself, et cetera. So some of the other work I do is helping people find time for themselves. So a lot of the more corporate type people, they're really busy with their jobs, but helping them carve out a little bit of time. And it doesn't always have to be a lot of time, but find that time on their calendar. And then that can be kind of a big one, pretty much for everybody in some way. And I also help a lot of people go through transitions, like if they're going through a divorce or, like I said, like career changes, but they're trying to shift and they don't really know what that next part of their life looks like. So I help them a lot with figuring out what is their passion, what are they excited about, what direction do they want to take, and then putting some action in place. So those are a few of the bigger ones. I've also had some people who just want more peace in their life. And so it's not as necessarily as tangible as I want to change careers, but in general, they feel stressed out and they just want to feel better. That seems to be a big one too. The authentic self, I don't know if you've heard that term before, but that's one of the reasons I went to my school. And I didn't know that when I went to my school, but now I know that because now I know what that is. I know how to help people find what that is. I'm hearing that more and more about that they want to connect with their authentic self. And so what does that mean? Well, I help people figure out what does that mean and have an experience of that so that they can then walk through their life, no matter what they're doing, from that place. And what that does is helps people feel more peaceful, more at ease, have more fun. It's all these things I've been talking about. So really that's the underlying piece of the puzzle for all of these other things that I mentioned, which is like new job, better relationships. That authentic self place, that's the key, to be honest.
So for our listeners who are relating to a lot of what we're saying here and probably thinking to themselves, how do I get started? What do I need to do? What are some tips that I can start implementing now that might help me get to a more joyful and fulfilled place in my life? What are some things that we can share with them that might help them take that step forward?
That's a great question. And I have a few different ideas. And again, these are starting points, like you said. One is to slow down. I'm speaking for myself here. When I was in that fast, sped up mode, I didn't really realize what was happening. I thought I had to get all of my to-dos done, all the stuff. Like that's what I was so focused on. But what happened when I slowed down and started to be aware, which you talk a lot about on your show, is awareness. That's what slowing down does. It helps me become aware of the areas in my life, for instance, of where I'm unhappy or where I want to make an improvement, et cetera. So step one is just slowing down. And what does slowing down look like? It can be just taking a deep breath. Like right now, as your listeners are listening, just stop what you're doing and take a deep breath. I'm doing it right now. And then when you just take a moment to step back, you can start to look at your life and take an assessment away. So step number 2 might be slow down, actually carve out some time to identify what your priorities are so you can align your time to that and your life to that. It's like if you don't really know what your priorities are, so I'll use this as an example. I've always been active, exercise, nutrition's always been important to me, but I've had ups and downs with it on whether or not I'm doing it or not, or how much I'm paying attention to it. And just this last year, I made a focus of this is what's important to me, especially for longevity. I'm 52. I just want to live and be healthy for the rest of my life. So I decided to put in an exercise plan. Well, I have to slow down to focus on that to actually make it happen. Going through life without carving out the time for it, making it a priority, that just doesn't work. So step 1 is identifying what your priorities are. If exercise and nutrition or taking care of your body is important, then we really actually have to carve out the time and actually put the actions in place to make that happen. So that's one of the pieces. And then also talking about small shifts over time. I don't know about the rest of you, whoever's listening to this, or you, Marissa, but whenever I would look at the whole picture of a project, I could get overwhelmed.
Completely agree. It paralyzes me, I'll be honest. It stops me from moving ahead. Yeah.
Exactly. And I had that too. And so it's good to just break it down into small steps. I know you've had some other people you've interviewed who talk about this as well. It's so important just to take little steps, is break it down into the smallest possible step you can do today to move forward on that thing. So if it's exercise, there's a book that I love. It's called Lift to Get Lean by Holly Perkins. So I was looking, it's a beginner's guide to fitness and strength. And I haven't been in the gym in a while. And I was like, I need a good book. And this happens to be focused on women's health. And so I just needed something to help guide me back. But that was step 1, was getting the book. Then I can look at, okay, she has some plans in the back of this book. And so I made some sheets for myself to track. That was step 2. And it wasn't even in the gym yet. And then, okay, do I have a gym to go to? No. Okay, well, maybe how can I do this at home? But making that decision, do I want to get a gym? Do I want to do this at home? That's step 3. Just very simple though, right?
100%. And I also feel like breaking things down into really small chunks makes you realize how much you actually did get done. Because when we're just looking at the big picture and it's not complete, because again, we always set high goals for ourselves and then we get upset with ourselves or discouraged when we don't attain that like overnight, and when it's actually a much bigger project than we anticipated. By just breaking it down into slices and saying, all right, even if I'm not going to achieve all of these steps, I'm going to take this one step. And even if I don't finish this one step, I got started. I gave it 30 minutes today, and I'll do another 30 minutes tomorrow, maybe an hour today, or even 4 hours. Whatever you decide, then you can look back at that day and go, oh my goodness, I did that. I was able to get that done, and now I'm ready to move on to the next piece. And now you really feel accomplished, and it increases your confidence in yourself.
I agree. This one will go into your territory, Marissa, with the decluttering. I have cleaned up my different offices or different projects by just doing one tiny thing. And I mean one tiny thing. Like in the past, I've done, I'll take one piece of paper and move it from this stack to the trash can. And I'm like, hey, that was one more piece of paper that was moved than it was yesterday. Correct. And I give myself credit for that because, hey, I'm moving it. I'm moving something.
Many people ask me, where do I start? And I say one drawer at a time. That's just the easiest way to explain it, right? Because you've had that drawer with clutter in there, just everything thrown in like your little trash basket, so to speak. And it's been there for years and years and years. And if you just take that one drawer and get it organized, you feel accomplished. And then you're ready to take on the next drawer and the next drawer. And pretty soon you start seeing some big changes.
Yes, exactly. And then I wanted to throw one more piece of the puzzle. And you asked me, how can people find more peace and joy now? Another thing that I help people with often is slowing down and quieting their minds. It seems like that's one of the big areas is busy, active mind. And believe me, I understand that one too. And to be honest, that's about building a practice. And usually meditation is the thing that works best for people. Sometimes going for a walk in nature, that can be meditative. So it doesn't necessarily have to be sitting in a room, doing meditation like most people probably imagine that to be. But I wanted to talk about how I help people build that practice. And again, it's small steps. I started my practice. I now meditate. It varies, but it took me time to build this up. But I just want to share what's possible. I went from nothing, no meditation, no anything, slowing down was hard, right? To now can sometimes be up to an hour to 2 hours in the middle or 45 minutes, but I have a nice practice. It is a practice that I developed over time. And that's what a lot of this is, even exercise, meditation, those are good ones to consider it a practice. It's like if I was going to become a black belt in Taekwondo or something, that is a practice over time, but we have to do the activities and put ourselves in a position to be able to practice, carve out the time, et cetera, and then develop it. But I literally started with 1 minute, one time a week. And this is a big thing I teach my clients as well is don't commit to something that you're not going to keep your promise because that erodes trust in ourselves. So we really want to keep those small steps actually doable and things that we actually will do. So if it has to start at 1 minute, one time a week, and that's what you will commit to, because anybody could do that. You can sit at your desk or sit anywhere for 1 minute and close your eyes, and take a deep breath. But if it needs to start at that point, and then you start to increase, then you can go 2 minutes or 5 minutes once a week, maybe 5 minutes 3 times a week, but you just build it up slowly in increments that you will actually do. And over time, if you stick with that, then you will develop practice. And I have. So I know that it's possible. But it's that small steps, like we've been talking about, in doable steps, and get rid of that all or nothing mentality. If anybody has that, I've had that in the past, and that has stopped me where, well, if I can't develop a 30-minute to an hour practice in meditation right now, then why even start? Or it's that decluttering, one piece of paper in the trash. Hey, that matters.
Yes, that's action. That's one step forward. That's really what matters. When you're talking about authentic self, we feel obligated to do things or be somebody that we really aren't comfortable with, but it's what's expected of us, whether it comes from pressures in our family or whatever environment we are dealing with at that time. And so I wanted to talk about the fact that because of these things, we feel like, okay, if somebody invites us to an event, we have to go. If somebody puts an expectation in front of us, we have to do it. And yes, we all have obligations and we all have things that we need to do in life to move ahead, or responsibilities as we like to call them. But how do we balance that so that we can still be comfortable in our own skin and not necessarily have to please everyone, but at the same time, not take such a step back that we become reclusive or people get the impression that we're not friendly or don't want to do things with them? How do you balance that in your life?
That is such a good question. I love that question because to me, it goes back to a big lesson I learned in my thyroid journey, which was to pay attention to what's important to me. And I agree with you. Like we do have responsibilities and things that we need to take care of, commitments perhaps that we've already made to people. And again, that's about keeping our word with ourselves. So one piece of the puzzle here is to not make commitments that we know we may not want to keep, to really be truthful about that with the person in front of us who we may be making that commitment to, or to ourselves, who we also sometimes say we're going to do something, right? And then we do or we don't. But the first step is to really, again, it's slowing down, not just rushing into, sure, I'll do that, but giving yourself some space so you can really check in and see, like, do I actually want to do this? Is this something that would support me? Maybe it's supporting this other person and that's what I want to do. I just really want to serve this other person. But being able to give yourself space, take a deep breath, to be able to hear what does feel good to you? What is true for you? Do you want to do this thing or not? You know, deep down inside, you know whether or not you really would love to do this thing or not. But you have to give yourself space to hear that. And you may need even courage. It depends on your personality, the person's personality. Sometimes people say yes to things because they're afraid the person might not like them, or they're afraid they're going to hurt that person's feelings.
That's correct.
Or they're a people pleaser type of person. And so that's another piece of the puzzle is what are your patterns? Like, what are your individual patterns inside? Like, what else is going on within you that may be making you say yes to things that don't matter to you, that they don't feel good to you, that you feel like obligated and that feels bad. But you want to be able to know what's behind your yes. Is it a yes because it will bring you joy and you're like, yes, I really want to do this thing? Or is it a yes because, oh, well, like we have already said, I'm going to hurt their feelings? That's no reason to say yes. And it might not be easy to say no, but that might be a practice. I've been talking about practices, right? Saying no in honor of what's true for you and your authentic self, that is a practice. But guess what? I heard it this way somewhere that I'm not saying no to you. I'm saying yes to myself and my health and well-being.
Yes, because if we don't do that, then what happens is we end up unhappy. And many times we make the people around us unhappy as well because it shows in some way.
Yeah, and that's what you carry into your life, right? That's what I hear in what you're saying there. So, yeah, exactly.
What is a misconception that you feel people have about what type of control they have on their lives?
I sometimes feel like this is one of the hardest things for the people I work with, myself as well. I want to make sure I include me in this because so everybody knows I'm not just this person who's got it all figured out, but I still continue to work my process and figure things out. And I watch what I'm doing.
I think we're all a work in progress, aren't we?
Yeah,
I hope so anyway, right?
Exactly.
I always think that every year, even every 5 years or every 10 years, we become better versions of ourselves. At least that's what I like to think.
I like it too. Yes, absolutely. I love that. One of the big things is that I call it looking in the mirror. You know, whatever we are disturbed about, again, this is a principle and practice of spiritual psychology. And it's that how you are with the issue is the issue. And it's easy for people and egos, how humanity kind of works, how we're all kind of programmed, or most people, is to blame the outside, the thing that's going on out there, that's what's disturbing my peace. But the truth is I'm disturbed because I'm disturbed. My peace is disturbed. And yes, that thing out there might have triggered it. However, I'm the one who's feeling it. And so that's where there can be a choice point once we start to recognize that, yes, that thing out there triggered this feeling inside, but I'm the one who's feeling it. So at that point, I can make a shift if I want to in how I feel about it and just see it for what it is. And then I can take action and do whatever I need to do about that thing. But that's a big one. And then some clues for how to identify the issue. So you look for, again, this is a spiritual psychology term. It's called I'm upset because. If you're upset because of something, you know you have inner work to do. That there's something going on inside of you that is disturbed and upset. Okay, well, that's your work to do. You need to look at why you're upset, what is triggering you about that. You probably have some belief about that's wrong, typically. And you can continue to go through life in upset, but it's so much better. It feels so much better to not be in upset. But that takes a little practice, first of all, to catch yourself in upset, to acknowledge that, oh, I'm in upset. How can I shift this within myself? What can I do about it? Then you can do some actions to do that, which is kind of perhaps beyond the scope of this, exactly what to do about that. But one could be deep breathing, take a breath, just as a simple thing. But there are many more tools and techniques I use with my clients to help them let go of the disturbances, the things that upset them, so then they can live that more peaceful life. Once you let go of the core of why you're upset, the peace just naturally comes forward. And you just don't get upset as much. And it's just so much more fun and easier.
Yeah, I agree. And again, it goes back to awareness. It starts there because we all have emotions. And then how do we manage it if we're not even aware about what's causing us to feel that way? So it starts there.
If we do blame out there, one of my favorites is, somebody cut me off in traffic. That's really upsetting, right?
Yeah.
And it can be because there's safety issues and I don't want to do that. And I get it. And yet my upset is mine and it's not going to stop that behavior of that person. So I'm the one that's going to be sitting there and upset. And they're already down the road doing whatever they do, right? So the upset lingers with me. So I don't want to be an upset because that's going to impact potentially, my health or my peace and my stress levels and that kind of stuff. But it also is a disempowering position because it puts me in a position where I don't think I can do anything about it. I just sit in the upset. So that's another piece of the puzzle, is to be able to acknowledge that, oh, I'm in upset. And that gives you then the power to be able to shift it. So it's coming from less of a victim, like somebody's doing something to me, into more of, oh, okay, this thing is happening. I actually can choose to make my life better and do something about it. That's a more empowered place to be coming from.
And I like that word, empowered, because
Yes.
really that's what it boils down to. It's, again, going back to self-evaluation and figuring out what you need to do to better the situation, whatever it is that you can do on your end. Some things you can't control, but there are certain things you can. And it's identifying what that is that'll help lead you on a better path, I would say.
Yes, I agree.
So, Michelle, if people want to learn more about what you do and all the services that you offer and get more information about the kind of life coaching that might help them in some way, where would they go? How do they find you?
The best place to find me is on my website, www.michellescottcoaching.com. And if they did want to reach out, you just fill in the contact form and it will send an email to me. If something here is resonating for you and you're kind of like thinking about, or have been thinking about, like, what could I do about this to make this better? Get help. I think that sometimes maybe we think we'll just do it ourselves or we'll figure it out. And that could happen. Like, there are a lot of great self-help books out there. Absolutely. And if you want to really make a change, the best way I know is to get help. Find the support that you need, but actually reach out. It's nothing scary. And if you wanted to reach out to me, I do sessions with people. I talk to people all the time. That's part of what I do. And there's nothing else to it other than having a conversation. That's it. We're just going to talk about it, talk about whatever's going on. Along the lines of what we've been talking about here, these are two amazing books for people that may support them. One is The Art of Extreme Self-Care by Cheryl Richards. And the second one is Slowing Down to the Speed of Life by Richard Carlson and Joseph Bailey. Those are such great books. So I hope that this has been helpful for people. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. The information that you shared today was so valuable. I learned a lot, and I know that people out there who are listening are going to resonate and learn from what we shared today as well. And again, that's what this is all about. I just enjoy so much talking to my guests and kind of dissecting some of the things that we all face, because as human beings, we all have challenges. We all deal with obstacles in our lives, and it's just a matter of figuring out what it is that's stopping us from getting to where we want to go and taking some steps to better ourselves. And as we talked about in this podcast, and we titled it Living a Bigger Life. And that's really what we all strive to do. So thank you so much for being a guest on my show. I really appreciate you, Michelle. That's all for this episode of Live Blissed Out. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Michelle Scott for being my guest. If you find value in our show, please visit liveblисsedout.com to reach out, subscribe, and share on social media. This show is made possible through listeners like you. Thank you. So long for now, and remember to keep moving forward.